Just a short presentation on the quiet zone and where we stand with that. Quick overview. These quiet zones are sections of rail that have to be at least a half-mile long and contain one or more consecutive public highway grade crossings in which locomotive horns are not routinely sounded when trains are approaching the crossings. They're regulated under the train horn rule, which does require the horn to blast, and they blast at loud levels, 96 decibels up to 110 decibels. In order to establish these quiet zones where the train will no longer sound a horn, you need gates, flashing lights, rail cabins at all public crossings, not just at certain ones. They have to be at all of them. And once those are all implemented and established, you can enact, a quiet zone.
What's a railroad cabin?
That's the cabins that you typically see in the right-of-way of the railroad that have all their electronics with the flashers and the synchronization. Okay. Along the KCS line here in Laredo, we have 32 crossings, at-grade crossings. 8 of them don't have gates. So in implementing a quiet zone, we would have to address those 8 crossings. This is a quick chart to let you know what the comparable noise levels are. You can see that refrigerators run at about 50 decibels, diesel trucks somewhere around 90 decibels. Diesel trucks without mufflers, they're up about 100 decibels. Sirens are between 100 and 110. Locomotives are somewhere between 95 and, like I said, 110 decibels. So when they travel and they sound their horns, it's very loud, as we all know. As I said, we have 32 at-grade crossings on the KCS line. There are 16 trains per day, 8 at night and 8 during the day. Every crossing that they come to, they'll sound 2 long, 1 short, and 1 long horn blast. So that's 4 at every crossing. So you multiply that out and you get 2,048 horn blasts every day. This is a diagram that sort of gives the impact of that noise. The red along the rail line is within 300 feet of the rail line. The beige or orange, yellowish is 1,500, and the light yellow is 7,500. Bottom line here is we can tell you that at the most severe level, we affect about 6,500 folks every day that live along that corridor. When you get out a little farther to 1,500, it goes up to 25,000 folks. And at 7,500 feet, you're impacting or affecting almost 90,000 people on a daily basis, 2,000 times a day. This is a quick overview of where we have gates, where we don't have gates. The red are ungated, green are gated. And this goes all the way from the UP line at Santa Isabel, all the way out.
Your office. And that's one of the proposals to close that street. What dead-end streets do is, in my opinion, create crime. They stifle development, and that being the cheap solution. For example, for Juarez Street, we have Convent in that area. We have Flores Street. We have San Agustin Street. And if you think San Bernardo, of course, and Santa Maria do have the expensive bars that we would need, and I think Flores does as well, right? But San Agustin Street, right by the library, that one does not. And closing these streets would stifle growth, and it's just something that I would not want to close almost any of the streets that I saw. I know some of the neighbors. I see Mr. Orfila here. His parents are residents of the area, and I know his mom, the train drives her crazy. It does drive her crazy. She lives about a block from the rail line. I live about 4 blocks either way from 2 rail lines, and it does that far away. It doesn't bother. And some people are different. I know Rudy Morales, who's one of our residents. He moved from one block from the rail line where he lived in San Francisco Javier to one block from the rail line on Santa Maria Street. He actually bought a house there after living 30 years by the rail line and said, it doesn't bother me one bit. I'm buying another house. And so I could not support many of the street closures that are proposed because it would be bad for the neighborhoods that we live in and work in, Mr. Bratton. And maybe I've come a long way in 2 years because, during 2 years I've learned more about urban development, but closing streets is not a very good solution. If we were to do this quiet zone, I would support doing it if we can find the funding through other measures that would not involve closing streets in our neighborhoods, because I just feel that it's bad for our neighborhoods.
If I may, I would echo Councilman Bali's comments as well. I mean, what we've learned over the years is that connectivity, that web, those intersections, that's what provides that mobility. But I would just take the opportunity to inject into the dialogue that there's probably no better quiet zone than a multimodal outer loop that would incentivize. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, Nathan, but that would incentivize the railroads to relocate out of town. You can imagine a bridge somewhere, possibly south of town, that has a northbound and southbound rail line, and where the trains just seamlessly cross without us really even paying much attention to it. And then, more importantly, would be the conversion of those old rail line right-of-ways into linear parks and new ways to get in and out of downtown. And east to west on that KCS line, and north to south on that UP line. But what we know about the railroad is that, at least in law school, what they taught us was, there was God and there was Jesus, and then there was the railroads, right? And so, the railroads aren't going to move a muscle because the law doesn't compel them to, unless we incentivize them to do it. So we'd have to lay it all out in front of them to get them to relocate. But I think that's obviously an outer loop is something that we need to be thinking about anyway. And if it's an outer loop that involves a rail system as well, that satisfies this inner city issue that we're having with all these at-grade crossings and noise, then and then opening up all these right-of-ways, it's multiple birds and one stone. But like you said,
if I may add, sometime back I did approach the railroads so we can start planning more accurately. And at least the administration of KCS at the time, about 2 years ago when I came on board, said that no, that they had abandoned. At some point they did want to do some sort of a half loop or so.
Union Pacific, right?
Well, not Union, but no, this is more the KCS line,
KCS.
Toward the south. And they said that they had abandoned that no, they wanted whatever investment they wanted to maintain the right of way through the inner city, and for us to be working on grade separation in above, grade, or below, whatever. More so that they would be too costly for the railroads. Way costly. But who knows? Maybe that new administration now, KCS. I know they changed CEOs about a year ago, and that CEO in particular told me that under no circumstances would they change their thinking.
That reflects what we had heard at the staff level, was that at one point they did have a plan to reroute the KCS line over to sort of South Laredo area, but they looked at the cost and it just was not feasible for them at the time, and so they just shelved it and said, we're going to stay with that. The other problem that they have, obviously, from KCS is that the rail bridge is KCS's rail bridge, and it produces a lot of revenue for them since UP uses it as well. And I not heard anything about them even beginning to consider to remove that rail bridge and put it somewhere else. because of the presidential permitting and all that. I mean, it takes, quite a few years to get that kind of a scheme
And that's
done.
my understanding too. I think the thinking or the logic, and I like that idea, but I don't think that within the foreseeable future, I don't think that's possible. So we need to focus on what we have and how can we improve.
And the purpose of bringing this forward is that this was a study that was done by the MPO. It was sort of an investigation of what were the potentials to try to minimize some of the noise and so forth. We had taken a run at it with one of the Union Pacific lines, the single line that they call the RG line, and we'd had a couple of meetings with the stakeholders there. Those meetings did not go well. I don't think they were upset with the idea of closing certain streets or necessarily with the quiet zone, but they were really upset with Union Pacific. And so we kind of put that on the sidetrack. We had this study done. We moved it forward at the MPO level. It's complete. Everything's there. But we needed to bring it to council in some venue to get a sense of where council was going to go with it. And so if it's something that is not likely to happen or is not wanted, we can kind of move it off the table and just
Well, let me ask you,
look at what else we have to do.
if
the
we
other
don't
thing-
close the streets, then the other option would be the arms.
Yes, and
The-
that's it. Just yeah, and that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. I'm not against the quiet zone because I've got Miss Orfila, and she's up at night, and I feel bad for Miss Orfila, and people like her, but if we close streets, then they've got crime, and crime is worse than crime is much worse than a ringing train. It is. Crime is something you don't want, and lack of development. So it just, if we're going to implement it, then we're going to have to put the resources in it. If we're going to implement it, I think we've got to do it the right way. And in District 8, there's probably only one street closure that would be okay in the whole district from what I know of neighbors in the area. There's one maybe. And other than that, the other street closures that are in the project just don't work.
Well, let me ask you
They
this, through the MPO, can we schedule something like every 2 years? Get those
How much does
arms
one quiet zone cost?
They can cost up to one quiet zone or one crossing.
One crossing with a quiet zone? area?
One crossing for a quiet zone will cost you up to $250,000.
They're very pricey.
That's something that the MPO could maybe handle every
So-
2 years or
So
so.
what
Yeah.
you
Every 2-3
In
years.
small areas.
Yeah.
Right.
For example, just to get us through the downtown area, it's not that many. It's probably 3 or 4.
I think you have 4,
So
and then you would need to improve a couple of other intersections.
without closing anything.
You have to have a minimum of 1/2
Maybe
mile.
2 every year or,
Well, let me ask you this, the TRZ, the TERS, could we use some of those?
well, for the downtown area,
Yeah.
That was
I mean,
the zone.
it's,
I don't think it's within the
No,
Well,
if it's not
it's
within the zone, you
city's
can't.
money.
Right, all TRZ funds have to be allocated within the zone or related to the zone.
No, our system,
I'm sorry?
I don't know, we'd have to look at that.
Oh, okay, yeah, what I'm
The
saying
only other
is,
thing that I would say is this, is that when you do not close any of the intersections, there's a formula that the Federal Rail Administration uses, and it's a combination of things that you have to do to minimize risk. So by not closing any intersections, you automatically just exponentially increase the cost of making the supplemental and alternative safety measures goes way up, way up. With the 6 closures that we were talking about along this whole section of roadway, we were looking at a cost of under $1 million to get it installed. Going the other way, you're talking, I don't know, certainly more than $1 million.
No,
probably somewhere in the $8 to $10 million area.
And that's understood. The thing is that by closing streets, we're actually losing money. I mean, because we have roads that were already developed that we spent money on, and so those roads are now rendered useless.
Well, they become dead ends.
They're rendered useless. So it's like if we were giving money away to not spend 250,000. I know 250,000 isn't always easy to come up with. I'm not saying that it is, but we're giving up a road that's more valuable than 250,000. And when you consider the impact that it has on a neighborhood, and when you consider the impact that it has on economic development, we're giving up way more than 250,000 when we close most of these roads. And that's the issue is if we work on this quiet zone, if we do, I believe we have to invest money in it. That we can't just say, let's just close the street and close this one and close the other one. I think we're throwing away money in exchange for not having a horn blow.
And I can see the need there at the, there by the centro. But how about Councilman Perez's? Do we have any of those? Maybe those we could close and we can leave the downtown.
Those are also along the way in pretty heavily crossroad for neighborhoods.
Where?
With the exception of Meadow Bridge, that's the only bridge there. The rest are all at grade crossings in District 4.
So we need those crossings.
Oh
you
yeah,
said.
I mean,
Okay.
the crossings are there. Otherwise, you would flood Meadow Bridge. It's crowded as it is because Meadow Bridge also brings the south into the city.
So you basically told us the answer. I think the answer is let's not close. Let's work on the other alternative then.
I think if we were to do anything, we'd probably recommend towards quiet zones, but the crossings would still be open.
Okay.
When you implement a quiet zone, that means the train won't honk anymore.
Okay. Do we have any objection with that? And if not, let's move on.
Yeah.
I think we
But this
resolved
is
that
only
issue.
just for information
Yeah.
purposes.
No.
We can discuss it again during our CIP process, during budget process.
Okay, but at least you have an indication that
Yes.
we need to
We
keep
get-
those
we get the
crossings
idea.
open. Yeah.
Not to belabor the point, but just as a matter of suggestion, this study was funded by the MPO, and the MPO may want to consider doing sort of an update to it along the parameters described by the councilman. In other words, what would happen if you close no intersections, and what would be the outcome? Sometimes if you don't close anything, you just can't qualify for a quiet zone. But the MPO could fund a quick study or an update to this study to ascertain whether or not it's even feasible. And I think that's probably give us some
If a
answers.
CBP what?
The MPO
Yeah, the MPO could with
could fund.
okay,
This study was originally an MPO study.
right.
So what I'm suggesting is at the MPO level, the MPO may want to update this study
Okay.
along the parameters or conditions articulated by the councilman. In other words, don't close any intersections.
Right.
And see what happens, what's the outcome, and
Okay.
what is the anticipated cost. And that would give us a very good picture of whether or not it's even doable or how much it would have to be
In
modified.
other words, you're saying that if we put arm bars up, they may still have to blow their horns.
Yeah,
So we need to know that.
Right.
If we were to fund all these arm bars through the MPO or the city or however
right.
if we were able to, I'm not saying we're
Right.
going to,
If you added,
would we be able to
right,
to
if
have
you
a
added
quiet zone?
those safety measures to the 8 that are existing that don't have any protection, plus tweaked a couple of the others, like putting medians to prevent people from going around them, because the quad gates, the ones that close all the lanes down, are super expensive. So you use the standard ones, and then what people will do is, you've seen them, they'll drive around. So the way you prevent that is you put a median in the road where they can't jump over it. Once they're in that lane, they can't get around. So those are some of the things that they have to look at, and some of those are acceptable to the Federal Rail Administration as safety measures. What I'm saying is, maybe the MPO could look at updating this and see whether or not it would pass muster with the Federal
Okay,
Rail
why don't you put it on
Administration.
the agenda, the MPO agenda for next time? We'll cover that. If I may add on railroad, just something very quickly. Congressman Cuellar, myself, and others have been meeting on the fact that the railroads actually stop there at the bridge and they hold back traffic and create all sorts of chaos here in the downtown area in particular. And there's really 3 items that we're waiting on, and I think they're going to report back to the congressman. One is they do that because they check the air brakes, but I think now that's being done on the Mexican side, which is good. The other point is the X-ray machines that they're using. they're trying to figure out if we can do all the pre-inspection at the yards, at the Mexican yard or at the US side over here yard. So this way, when the train does pass through the bridge, it's not going to stop. In other words, it's not going to hold back traffic. But for the public out there, we're working on it. It just takes time to clear all of this. And the other issue was the crews. They're trying to have a universal crew where the Mexican crew can actually go all the way to the U.S. Yard and deliver the trains there, and vice versa. The U.S. guys go into Mexico, and that's going to save
Right, and
time
and they're doing similar to the pre-inspection, right?
right.
To have it on both sides, and not necessarily just here, but you can go over here, you get pre-inspected there, and then just the train will not stop at any of those intersections. It'll go straight.
Yeah, and they want to share information too. Have maybe the Mexican side do the X-ray and then share it with the U.S. Customs people, or vice versa, or both, and double check each other. Right? Okay, that's that.
And the other thing is on February I think the 19th, the rail division from TxDOT will be coming down to begin speaking to stakeholders and the community about that rail mobility study that was just authorized by
Right.
council.
And also too, Case, UP's been visiting with the city, with Nathan and our city manager as well on trying to, on that overpass, finding a place there maybe that we can design some sort of overpass to access the west portion of the city.
Yes,
Right,
that's correct.
okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you very much. What is,
Okay. Next, Mayor, members of the council, you'll have a quick presentation on your 2016, 2017 capital improvement projects. Mind you that your 2017 capital improvement projects will be getting together with every council member individually between now and budget time, so that we can look at any additional projects that might be coming up that need to be moved up or so forth. And we do that every year in order for us to structure the CIP to coincide with your budget approval. Rosario?
Yes, good afternoon again, Rosario, for the record.
yes, ma'am.
I know it's after lunch and I don't want you to get sleepy or anything, but because this is really exciting, at least it is for me, because this is where we really tell our story on what we do and what we want to do. Like Mr. Olivares said, we will be meeting with you individually to be able to discuss what you believe are your needs for your district and citywide. We do meet with the departments also on an annual basis, and they do update what they see are their needs within their respective departments. If you are able to. So what we want to go over, it's just 2 years, the 2016 and what was approved in 2017. It is always a working document. We can always come back, amend, and change. When we do go out and sell bonds, we present to you a plan of finance. We work very closely with our financial advisors, Estrada Hinojosa, to be able to bring to you what our capacity is for future years. When we adopted the CIP budget for 2017 to 2021, 5-year plan, we came up with $533 million. Some of it is funded, some of it is not. There's wish lists and there's things that we do need. If you look at utilities, for example, out of that $533 million, utilities is the one with the largest needs. This is our beast underground, basically, that no one really sees, but is so much needed and so crucial for our city. They're asking for about $241 million. We have planning, also traffic department. We have 6.6 for streets. Solid waste, another 12 million, police 14 million, fire department 15 million, airport, usually it's funded through grants also, but overall it is our wish list and things that we need. Our current bond that we did sell, we sold a $21 million bond. we were able to provide, for you all, for each district, $500,000 towards whatever needs that you have, whether it's sidewalks, whether it's some type of paving, streetlights, et cetera. That was a $4 million, allocation in total. Per district was $500,000. We also were able to approve a fire station number 8 in Delmar. That was $3.25 million. The railroad quiet study, which Nathan talked about, we allocated $1 million towards that study. We also allocated $1.2 million towards downtown improvements, whether it was for lighting, sidewalks, parking. We sold a separate bond, strictly taxable for land, for another $3 million. So we are investing more than $4 million in the downtown area right now, but strictly this is non-taxable money for $1.2 million. We also needed repairs to some of our buildings, so our roofs, health department, parks, and Rooney Plaza, total of $900,000 combined. We also sold some money for $150,000 for traffic signals at Bartlett and Kelton. Another traffic signal, another $150,000 for Bartlett, Thomas, and Gale. We also have a transportation initiative for $5 million that Mr. Olivares could be able to explain to you further. We also got $3.2 million for vehicles, 50 police marked vehicles and 10 unmarked vehicles. Those are in order. Baskin Crossing, $750,000. The Veterans Museum is in conjunction with Webb County. This is an initiative we had back in 2007. We had to retire the bond, and the county is still asking us to be able to come back and assist them with that. So we went out and reissued again the $500,000. The animal care facility, this is for the building itself to be able to do an expansion for $250,000. And then we're also doing a project in traffic for a citywide synchronization of lights for another $120,000. We're also updating our parks master plan, and that is an estimated amount of $50,000 that we'll be using for that. If there's no other questions on that.
Could you go back to the first slide? I know in the past, every so often, there's some criticism that these discretionary funds that city council folks get, the 500,000, they used to get $1 million, I believe, and then came down to 500,000.
It depends, sir, on the amount that is, the capacity that is out there. There was 1 year where only $100,000 was available per district. Some there was $250,000.
Who determines that? Who sets that then?
Depending on the capacity of the bond and the needs of the
But
city.
it's management, you all make
Yeah, we,
recommendations?
basically, when we meet with all the council members and we look at their needs and what they're recommending to do, we let them know this year the capacity is only gonna be $500,000, or this year the capacity is gonna be $300,000. That basically gives them the idea as to what they can do in their
And could
district.
you explain that to the public? Because apparently they feel that this money could be used for any and all things. It's precisely for brick and mortar, I believe.
It's just strictly brick and mortar, yes.
Okay, so for,
There are some equipment needs also at some point, but they have to be a large sum. It won't be just a computer. It has to be a large sum for a public property,
Right.
personal
And
property finance.
and I asked council too, I mean, this is your opportunity. I gather that you all are somewhat satisfied with the arrangement that we have now, and then not, say otherwise, because I think that's the feeling I get from council, that they would rather continue with that same arrangement with the discretionary funds.
It was,
But I bring it out because the public has asked that on a number of occasions.
it's very difficult when you get a citizen and you say, well, you know what, I need a sidewalk as an example. And so we were at some point struggling, and so the city council was able to manage what the needs of that specific area, because they see it every day, they know what the needs for that area are, and I believe it is more manageable for the district, but then again, whatever you all decide.
If anything, I mean, we should have additional discretionary funds. I mean, because we get the phone calls.
Yes.
And I know y'all get some of the phone calls out there, but we get the phone calls, and and sometimes it's real nice, and hey, can you do this? And a lot of times, we're like a piñata, and they're just, well, we want this, and why can't we get that? And so if I mean, I'm not saying let's go break the bank. I mean, there is a big part of me that wishes we didn't have all these outstanding debts. And at some point in time, we're probably going to have, cut up credit card for a little while and kind of get back on our feet so that we can, live within our means a little bit more efficiently. I guess on a cash basis as opposed to a credit basis. But I wish we had a little bit more, especially in my neck of the woods where everything is just so infrastructure heavy. We don't have the luxuries of saying, hey, let's go to a great facility, although we already do have a great facility. It's all about infrastructure. My neck of the woods, you can't do anything meaningful infrastructure-wise without having at least $4 or $5 million.
They're asking for a lot of quality of life, a lot of parks, a lot of things to connect with recreation. And so it's really coming in and start planning.
I'd like to mention that this issue of parks and others, when people come up about these wildlife groups and say, well, I think we had enough of parks, let's do something different, let's do something more citywide, programs across, whatever. And I don't know how the council react to that. But anyway, I throw that out because we also do there's this, I guess this incentive or implication somewhat that these discretionary funds are being used for promotional tables, facilities, be considered for other. Do we get any of that? I know I've got.
Well, you have promotion here, so does council members. Everything, when it comes
What are
down,
those amounts of the public will have? That's what I'm saying. I don't want to do anything on the public.
I think the promotion line items at each individual council district houses are $5,000.
I don't want to.
The mayor's different.
Those are 20 or 20. What we don't, what is that?
and every time there's a request for to sponsor something over by the table, they're the ones that sign up on it to make sure.
That's usually what I do when people make requests to me, that I send it to the management and say, look, is it legal that, can you do it or not, or whatever. Because it's got to satisfy a certain purpose.
That's another line item on site. Yes, this is operational. So there's two budgets, if I fail to mention that. There's an operational budget for your daily expenses, the maintenance and operations. And then there's another type of budget, your capital improvement budget, for brick and mortar. And so they don't coordinate. They're inside. And this is what we're waiting for, brick and mortar.
Okay, there's another question that's arose, the last few months or so, is whether the council member can actually assign or designate his portion to another council district. And there's no set rule. It's basically what the council people want to do, I guess, or their lumps are.
I personally helped out in District 2 and District 4 and one time in District 8.
Okay, so I take it from what I said, that you all have to do that way, and I think that's great.
I think that the council looked at it as an opportunity to leverage their resources.
At this point, it's still up on each other. I mean, you feel that in another district, you're able to do good and help off the residents. I mean, it's for a good cause. I mean, we're not throwing money at it. Trying to help people with other districts working with each other. It's collaborating. I don't know.
And I think the word discretionary is misleading, because it's not discretionary. It's not like each council member is given a checkbook. That's what the other council members are here for, and the mayor, that make sure that the funding is for a good purpose, that it serves the community, and all of that funding goes for different projects, different infrastructure projects throughout the community that serve our citizens. And if there's any council member that disagrees with the project for any reason, that's why we're a board. We're not here to always agree with one another. We're here to watch the taxpayers' dollars. I take that very seriously. I know the other council members take that very seriously too. So I don't know who coined the word discretionary. I don't know what.
We'll talk to you to get some funding, maybe, so that we can take it out, so that we can get it into the
Talk
town.
about that.
But I guess the other point, and I can see that, our districts, we're all neighbors to each other, and so it is good to have the freedom to say, okay, well, the allocation of funding to another district, even though it's in another district, there's positive consequences to the constituents and the neighboring districts, and so it does provide us a little flexibility. Or maybe there's like this one great park that everybody can chip into because it's a regional park. There's, so it's.
The other point that, since we're talking about construction vehicle, whatever is the salary distribution of the people, and keep on asking, and I mentioned this to the city manager at the first meeting or something close to it, that we should again explain what we voted on and who's actually participating and who's salary range, and who's not, because I think the vote is so confused. Maybe we can have some clarification.
We'll come back with that specifically, going back to presentation. In 2016, we also sold some environmental service bonds. We sold a total of $5 million worth of bonds for drainage projects. So one of the drainage projects, the larger one is $2 million, and this is much needed for Florida Street, Hidalgo to Washington. We also sold $1 million for citywide drainage projects. This is for the entire city, wherever we know that there is a need and there's flooding involved, we can certainly look at that. North Carroll drainage, that's the backwards, $800,000. Sagami Creek Gale drainage, $700,000. And the Tacoma Creek, $500 million. So that is your $5 million bond package for 2016. In 2017, yes.
On the first page of the presentation, we have 150,000 for the animal shelter, and then on the fourth one, it's actually 150,000.
It's 250. It's 250. Initially it was 150, and we changed it to 250, but I did not.
Yes, there's one thing for the Veterans Museum, I know, is that earmarked for a specific venue, a specific area, or
Yes, but council was in the downtown area of Alias property,
specifically for that?
yes.
And we're having issues with that right now, but the city has always maintained their commitment to that project. So I know they've come to us a couple of times and asked, well, where's the city's funding? The city's funding has always been.
Where is the taxes?
It's in District 7. 6, I'm sorry, 6. That
I've heard of some backwoods, but I don't know the backwoods.
do you have confirmation on that?
Yeah, what you give an explanation for what it is.
Backwards is south, or both back to the right farm, sorry, Water Department, the service station, just south of between Shiloh and Plantation.
So for 2017, we do have a list, and it's all changing, as I said at the beginning. One of the things that we're looking at, the new bond that we have, is very for a $7 million match for a type of grant for the transit facility. You're probably asking, well, why not have transit pay for transit? There's some issues that are going to be brought up later on by with our existing members, but the funding for it basically general or traffic, okay.
Rebecca, this is the match for that $10 million that we received, 12 million. And the local match is going to be a big sum. This is something that we're going to be discussing with mayor and members of the council during the CIP process to see what direction we would like to go with this. So we just want to bring it up right now that this is the opportunity that's before us. That it's a big chunk of money.
This is,
This is to develop the transit system over here. The property is already there off of
Operation administrative. Bus garage. Can we go back to the next slide? The staff also looked at this, and there's a Springfield extension, Shining North, $5 million. Again, this is up for discussion. We'll go back. Go back one more time.
This is the road going to the new commercial center.
Yes. Downtown.
I'm sorry, can we go back just for one second? Or two or 10, one. There's another section of Springfield, south of this, that, I mean, if you were to do this, it'd be great, but it's really, I mean, unless you've got that artery, flowing through the other dead end of Springfield, it doesn't seem as meaningful. And I know we're gonna sit down and discuss later on, but to my colleagues here and to the public, you know, Springfield right now kind of dead ends, they're behind Mary Health, and it would be, oh, there you go, there's Matt, outstanding. And so to have an alternate, because really it's I-35 or it's McPherson. There is no other route to punch through, and so if you did have Springfield fully completed, it would make a big difference to a lot of people. And you can see some of that adjacent land is available for development. A lot of it is in the floodplain and isn't so much, but that's okay too, because those are linear parks that don't need to be maintained, that are tremendous amenities for the surrounding areas, and so put that out there and have you all be thinking about that.
Yes, sir, it is on our CIP in future years. The other two things that I believe are on, I can come back and give you the amount to those already. This would be one of the worst spaces.
Once we take a look at the other connector from Mary Health to International, we will we'll come up with some strategies on how possibly it could be done.
Right.
You know, we could do the private public
Yes.
initiative,
Yeah.
and we go from
Because
there.
it is, you know, critical to have the participation of the development community in this as well, because they benefit most directly from it. I mean, we have the traffic issues resolved or mitigated, I don't say resolved, mitigated. But to them, you know, it's a win-win.
Eventually, Springfield will be able to go all the way across town, from north to south. And those are the two connections that still need to be done. And at the same time, you're also looking at water and sewer that will also be extended to, so that the development can go. So those are all things that are included in that strategy.
And that area is just a little bit weird because Springfield kind of dies there, right? The Target parking lot. It just kind of dies, and so it's not like you can really, I guess, connect Springfield in the way that it is now. It gets narrow. There's already development there.
Yes.
It's on the other side of International more than anything there. Between International and Shiloh, it's just where you can reconnect them. It is what it is. But this particular road, it was part of our agreement with the new commercial center.
Yes,
That's
this one
coming
here.
in. And when is that commercial center coming in?
Well, they kind of put everything on hold. And we fulfilled our commitment and we purchased the property. We went to council, we purchased it, we're prepared. As soon as they decide to come back, that's where we were talking about, the Papados and then the entire mall that's gonna be developed up there. So, yeah, right off of Springfield that go on the access road into San Diego. So they were proposing to build another mall, in that particular piece of property, but also along the frontage of I-35 and the access road. They were also gonna develop some strip malls that were gonna connect through the back road on this particular extension. So, but they put a stop on the project, so we put a stop on it too, but we're prepared, we've already obtained the property, there might be one more property that we need to obtain, but we're not gonna do that until they make the commitment to start, developing.
And this is not occurred recently or?
But yeah, we went to council and everything, so it's something that happened about maybe a year and a half ago.
You came to us to purchase the properties that we need to extend.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
Right away. And then now is the heavier investment of the infrastructure.
Next slide. We also, are seeking another additional $200,000 for street light replacements in the downtown area. What we took care of today was initial in the Bocata area. We realized that there's greater needs throughout downtown, so we will request $200,000.
I'm sorry, can you go back to the last slide? What was it again?
Additional downtown light, street lights.
Isn't that what we just do?
We did in the Bocata area. This is for the rest of the downtown or a portion of Brookline Basin, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Continue the upgrade of LED.
Yes.
And,
Also, Diamond North Springfield, there's a redesign of $191,000 basically for the signs.
Yeah, so the lighting and the road really have a light and then.
Could you adjust your mic a little more so
I'm so sorry. Another project, for $1 million from TechStop, it's seeking $120,000 match. Basically, it's an upgrade to the McPherson intersection. There's 17 traffic signals, controller cabinet, vehicle detection and communication, all throughout McPherson Road. So the match would be $120,000.
that's the person in this one?
It's McPherson, Route 20 and 59. Between Route 20.
So even though the NPO is already programmed overpasses, I know that's coming in time, but, is that necessarily timely?
I will defer that to the traffic authority.
You know, Councilmember, I think you're thinking of Loop 20. You're talking about McPherson between Loop 20 and Saunders. So all of McPherson, think about McPherson between Doctor's Hospital all the way to Saunders Street.
Okay, so that image is, Loop 20 and, yeah.
It's between Route 20 and 59 is what
And
it's
one
right.
and all, yeah, there's what this is, okay. The actual, traffic signalization is gonna be along McPherson, 20th, probably. On
I will defer initially, with utility department's looking for $79.5 million next year. Some of the projects are Manala Street for $48 million. 42 in Zacatecas Creek South Middle Line, $10 million. A 24-inch resounding interceptor, $15 million. Wastewater treatment plant expansion, $4 million. And North Middle expansion design for $2.5 million. I will go ahead and let Mr. Riaz will explain to you if you have any questions on those particular sites.
Just say you didn't do anything more than that, that's all. Come on.
There you go. Don't tell him that.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Chairman, City Council, I hope you all had a good lunch. Whatever comes in has to come out. I mean, all you hear from morning is the comprehensive plan, the goal, all these things depends on infrastructure. Water and sewer is the biggest, without water and sewer, you can't have development. All the new work. Thank God, and city got purchased about 7 years ago.
I know, but we're not gonna use 78 to build a wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, but we always have a buffer. You look at North Florida, we have 30 acres. Yes, it could be used for other use.
We can make the size of the footprint of the actual plant itself.
Because if you considering the future growth, I say probably 10, 15 years. But we want to have the buffer.
Is that including the buffer?
So,
We're gonna follow up with a briefing, review on High Street and together with DEP, on that. So we have a scheduled, timeframe.
Yeah.
and part of the issue, Councilman, the reason we're bringing up the mayor, we don't have the funding would be a biggest issue on the sewer side. The last rate increase was done in 2007, and at that time, it was expected that in 5 years, it would spend $66 million. Actually, we spent almost triple of that amount upgrading. So the sewer treatment plant becomes very expensive. It's costing about $10 to $15 per gallon for the new plants. And so there used to be, the rate used to be looking at again, to increase the sewer rate support the cost. And that's, I'm saying, without this, Achar, Rupinder, all those, we don't have any more sewer. That's what we are gonna bring soon to a proposal to upgrade the Unitech.
Is there any discussions with the developer?
Yes.
Hey, you guys are gonna, pop wildly from this adventure, therefore, why not be ponying up for?
They are confident that part of the annexation agreement, they will be upgrading of the sewer, but we have to invest the money. We will not improve all $4 million just for Unitech, but we will improve probably half of it.
I think what the park is supposed to be when we had the park your track, when it's fully developed, it's like 7,000 acres. Industrial and residential and commercial property.
Yeah, but not all the truck can go to the Unitech because the train.
I realize that, but, all that sewage is gonna go somewhere.
Yes.
And, what's the plan for having the developer, help pay for these costs?
They already agreed to pay for it, but they pay when they come from that. When the council approved the annexation agreement for Whittier, we put the cost of the water and sewer upgrade for the treatment plant. But we don't collect those until they come from that. That's what we have to invest in first. So they can start planning it and then we can start collecting.
And you'll be able to see how that particular growth is going under the transportation initiative that we presented.
And so, I'm saying we will be asking council to give us an authorization to go ahead and do a rate study, just to see where we are. Just the sewer, we are not talking about water.
And right now, how's our sewer rate in comparison with other, cities?
We are still one of the, not the lowest, but we are at the lowest tier. Especially on the commercial rate, we are commercial, we still charging less than the residential.
Well, I can't wait to get all the phone calls, on this one.
So we last year council authorized, we pretty much finalized the water audit, which we will bring it to as soon as council wants to see it, we will bring it our water audit, what happened to the rate study, that's the one of the things we will ask council to give us authorization proceed with the waste.
What about the energy audit?
The energy audit, we are still going through it with the Energy Conservation Office. They are finalizing it. Our goal is to submit for a energy conservation law with the CITRO to remove some of the sewer treatment plant and water treatment plant. And also, we're gonna bring it to council the waste to energy project, which is another energy enhancement. That should come back to the next council meeting.
Is that real science though, the waste to energy, or is that just kind of out there experimental?
Well,
It is.
there's all kinds of studies going on. It will produce. The only reason why it went to, it stopped is because of the gas price. It was so low that it wasn't proper to invest all that money at the time. We're starting to get feedback that they're starting to get interest again. But all the entire studies were done very carefully and so forth. But before we do that, we probably need to come back and rebrief the mayor and to the council on it before we start again.
And that one will be to council, and that will be low cost to the city. So we will provide the sewage, they will make energy and fertilizer property, and they will pay for all the infrastructure, everything, maintaining the.
There's no risk to the city, no financial cost.
Yes. We gotta go, we are meeting the PCQ, end of this month. You can see how PCQ will permit this one, we need to know from the location. So yeah, there is more cost. So that's pretty much my.
That's your ass.
I would love to get a motion that we can proceed with waste study.
Motion that we proceed with the waste study.
Just on sewer.
Motion second. The water audit, did you cover that, or?
Water audit, I'll present it to council for the next council meeting.
Discussion? Heard those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes, right? Well, I say no, motion carries unanimously.
One last slide, presentation, is I want to show you
Go
another.
closer to the mic, please.
Right here.
Did we need to put another block of it?
I know that. One last slide, to be able to show you what are the major projects that we're looking at. And that's $4 million, that's probably going to be some other sports venues, sales center. We're not sure yet, but we have plenty available.
Now that you mentioned the sports venue, portion of the sales tax, I don't know if that's we thought maybe as a council to kind of review that and see whether we should continue at some point. Obviously, we got to pay our debt, and there's more being added to it. But I personally would want to see maybe council bring up agenda and see what the meeting of council is to maybe go beyond oppose the sports venue and work that into something more.
Yes, but you need to realize that sports venue right now is currently assisting the operations of the NBA and baseball. And
Maybe we can do a portion of that. Yeah, we don't know.
If we can bring it back up, the accident and everything, it would require us to go back to the board and start it.
No, yeah, and I'm not saying it's gonna work, I'm just saying let's review it and see if there's possibilities of utilizing some other.
And to get the public's input as well, because, we get a lot of calls on, why this building, for instance, it's a bit more attendance, why are we injecting, millions and millions of dollars into this? Whereas we could be starting to look at, economic development indicator in the south. We could be doing all sorts of other things with this extra piece of sales tax, as opposed to, supplementing, family enterprises, like this one. I know that the LEA is struggling and.
This facility was voted by the.
No, we have commitments, and we're gonna honor those commitments, obviously. I'm just saying beyond the construction.
the operations.
Mayor, I prefer to Councilman Alves, and we have a lot of wires and we want to see there in the morning to do it. development is a priority because if the people don't have money, they don't have to operate it places, or if they do that, it's a period of care, and then hopefully they will come back and want to look
We can program it, program the thing off it and move it on. But again, I'm gonna reference the book Triumph of the City, to reference, in that book, Detroit. And, Detroit was a one-horse town, right? All they did was build cars. And with globalization, all that went away. And, their demise was probably, our success in the way that, all these auto parts now come through here because manufacturing is elsewhere. We're kind of a one-horse town too. So if you, overlay a vessel evaluation and a renegotiating NAFTA, we've got some pretty serious problems on our hands. And so what Detroit tried to do is they tried to build their way out of poverty. And all of that failed miserably with all these projects and whales that started popping up because of the debt service and the maintenance of them. And it's just not a it's a failed course of action. So I think we need to take a deep look at it. Yeah, the word may have voted it in way back when, but is it still in vogue today? Is it still worth all the money we got to throw into it today? And that's the discussion we have.
We'll bring it up, didn't have to look at.
Yes, sir, that's definitely a policy decision, yes, sir.
At the end of the day, this evaluation goes back to the board. Correct? Essentially, it's all working. Hey, if we're taking from the people, I mean, we're just going to go to work and go home and not do anything, or go ahead and whatever your earnings are for the week, you're going to go out of town and spend money. You don't see the entertaining out there, or you think it's weird, or you could have it here. I mean, it's something to consider. I mean, I don't want to drive all the way to San Antonio or Canada or just to go see a country and take away from the things we already have. I mean, yes, like you say, maybe it's going past home, but we can take into consideration that we consider stuff. I mean, we just cannot know the entertainment for the crowd and constituents. Well, the nurses on the radio, that's what we need to drive out. I mean,
Absolutely, and this is what, you're absolutely correct, so we're all on board, we're all just going away. Anything else?
I agree with you. Users who have older friends create.
This is our two, that is possible, we get 3 more times. And make the city more affordable with even the lower income folks and even the, at least the amount of money that they make, they can build it within.
Oh, I forget which Roman emperor it was, Augustus, or which one of the Caesars it was, but his whole thing with getting Rome, I'm not just a little idiot amongst all these efforts, but what he did was he built a circus, right? Kind of building on the Colosseum. And okay, well, we'll just entertain them, and they won't be focused on the real problems at hand. It's a very, controlled political move. And I think the public's listening and they're watching and they're seeing these budgets, and these are luxuries, right? The beautiful golf course we have in District 7, it's a luxury, and if you can afford a luxury, it's great. But if you can't afford the luxury, then you need to, focus on what you're supposed to do, right? The city was supposed to be, streets, sewer, water, fire, police, and bare bones basic. And you start getting fancy when you've got the excess money. If you don't have the excess money, then don't get fancy. And this is fancy, for 150 people that say to show up at games, it seems a tremendous waste of money. I think if you added the debt service and all the other money, it's like $1.2 million a year to keep this thing, alive and growing, and the computer doesn't necessarily work very well. So yeah, we need to think about it.
Well, Mayor, what I'd like to say is, it's really good that we're having this discussion, but there is a balance. And we talk about
for members of the community talk about how do we keep our educated population in the community? How do we keep our citizens spending their money in Laredo? And if for example, we're saying, well, we have to support the LEA because, it was a bad deal, but now we've got to support it. I don't think it was a bad deal because I've gone to countless concerts there and left my money in Laredo instead of taking my money to San Antonio or to Austin or to Corpus. And if you look at communities our size, Corpus Christi, for example, they have a place to go to events. And I've been to Corpus Christi to events with my children and with my spouse because they have a place to go to events. I've been to the Valley to events, and I've stayed in Laredo for events. And people come to Laredo from Monterrey or from the Valley or from San Antonio or Corpus to our events. So there is a balance. We want people who, educated people who move to Laredo for jobs to say, hey, this is a great city. I'm having fun. I'm going to the baseball games. I'm going to concerts. There's things to do. If Laredo didn't have, for example, an LEA, then we wouldn't be competitive. We wouldn't be competitive. We wouldn't be like Corpus. We wouldn't be like Waco. We wouldn't have things for our citizens and our residents to do. So although, yes, we have to put some money in it, we're all getting something out of the LEA, for example. And so I appreciate the debate. I appreciate the input from all the council members. But I just feel that we need to always consider that even if there is an expense, there is an economic development that does come with these facilities. And if you just look outside our window, you look at all the development around the LEA, the hotels, the restaurants, everything that's come from that. I don't think we've lost. I don't think citizens have lost. I think the citizens have actually gained not just entertainment, but there's been economic development that's coming.
Thank you for your comments. Let me just take a few seconds here to wish Councilwoman a happy birthday. We had a stage here. Maybe we can all join in more festive discussion today about saying happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Councilwoman. Happy birthday to you.
And the bar will be open. Well, then we'll celebrate the bar time.
This is the very last slide. So there's also $8 million worth of exit expansion for the fast lane that we're looking at. Airport projects coming in the future of $17.5 million. And solid waste is always being equipment. They have a plan on an annual basis to be able to fund $3 million from their enterprise fund for additional equipment.
So the airport projects, those are all paid from airport
Mostly
money.
grants, yes, and there's small grant matches that they're taking.
And solid waste, they got their own bill covers.
Yes.
And Bridge is covering the exit route.
Yes,
And the natatorium is coming from where?
sports.
Sports venue or. There's many other projects, and I'm sure that you all will be thinking about what the city and the districts are, and how to be individually and then as a council. And so
Thank you very much. Audience, last question?
We're gonna lose some capital yearly.
Could I bring my topics up if you don't mind? That's reading. It won't take long.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, if you don't have to, with all permission. Whatever. Okay, I would take it for that.
Mayor's initiatives.
Yeah, can I have a motion for that, please? So moved. Motion, second. Second, discussion. Now we're closing, say aye.
All rejected, motion carries. Thank you, this is item 7. There's an issue, yeah, homelessness initiative, good, to us. As you all know, we do have a major issue, and of course, they'll explain that to the finance to us, during the way of expenses. I feel that our city is a caring, a compassionate city that needs to do for the unfortunate. So, I visited in various places, one of those is David Perot there in San Antonio, and I think that's really a good model there. One day we could get to this organization.
Mayor and City Council, we love you, lecture, which is school and the mayor's initiative here, we did sit down with the Homeless Coalition and talk these issues together. So providing some input to council regarding our concerns regarding homelessness. Just thinking about what we're going through right now, it's cold in here, and we're in a nice, comfortable area, we're eating, and just thinking about those individuals in our community.
But there's a misconception, people think that the homeless people are not related, but
Yes, sir. We'll cover that in the presentation. I just want to remember to think about the individuals that right now are without a house, without a home, without a safe place to reside in safe environment. So the procedure is that the presentation will cover the homeless coalition statistics, continuing care study that is being conducted by Tammy Carly, the city health, the Florida Health Reform, and Bethany Health that participated together to undertake the study. The participation in the Air Challenge Center of Homelessness and the police department study that was conducted to analyze the panhandle. Basic statistics that each year we conduct a point time count. It's a combined study that we do Bethany Health sustainability for the Homeless Coalition and provided the field to gather the information. We distribute our teams. It's a combined effort with all the coalition members. It's an all-day effort, once a year, and basically the stats for last year, in 2016, were that we have an estimated annual circulation of basically 1,421 homeless, accounted by 459 quarantine those that are actually homeless, 406 which are under the maintenance factor, which is basically school-age kids, and then 560 at risk of being homeless, that's not being able to pay the rent, or not being able to pay their mortgage and potentially being homeless. Again, this is the annual throughout the year. The survey that was taken counted for 200 individuals, and all this information that's going to be presented to you right now was based off of that information. Other information.
How do those numbers compare? It's estimated 1,421 for a city of our size population.
I don't have that data, sir. For right now, I just want to present to you all this, and we can actually do a study for the.
I was wondering, like, San Antonio's per capita homeless population is
Not sure.
0.0075.
Not sure, but we, once we finish the study, we can do that analysis, and bring that back to council and present that analysis too. Not taking into account was a people correction facility, hotel motel, people residing in Mexico, and shared housing. This year's 20 count is scheduled for January 26th. This year, we actually have, this was just about in the back, a board member that we have also one of the resources of the Homeless Coalition. We do intend to have people at the bridges to monitor that and serve and get serving that who has a housing concern, but is residing in Mexico due to that side. So we're going to try to hit that. Sure.
Yeah. Is there any information on this from Bakeries Alliance or Congress?
No, this report does not reflect that, but we're taking notes and we'll be trying to bring that back to council.
And then you will see the any
I don't have a statistical breakdown of that right now, but like the fire side reform, this is 406 is estimated amount of folks, that, or kids that are basically facing homelessness.
This is just all it is, it's very much,
Yes.
where, you didn't actually answer what you're saying. Yeah, word on the record, yeah, it says bias, right on this coalition. The shelter numbers are actually the first. Yeah, they're in the 459. So anybody that's living either in Casa Misericordia, Bethany House, we don't count Sacred Heart, they're not eligible for that, but so you're going to find anybody that's at shelter, you're going to find that represented in the 459. Across the country, Councilman, is about 1% of the population that's statistically at some point homeless, could be homeless during the year. The major metros may have a rate that's a little higher than that. For us, it's probably around that mark. It's probably a little lower than that, but that's more of a, used to be the way the county was. What's happened with the federal government is that they changed the way they count homeless. That's why that number, 459, gets represented across the country. It's really understated. It doesn't account for anybody that's making any mess up. The 406, just so you all are aware, is also, in my eyes, understated. Because it only accounts for the students, it doesn't account for the family that's double or triple up. And then the rest of the folks that are counted elsewhere, not eligible for the life insurance. It's not necessarily to alarm you that the numbers are significant. The 459 is basically anybody that on one given day can go touch either on the street or at shelters. So those numbers are based on 200 interviews that were done in January.
No, and recently an officer from PD enlightened me to describe the fact that there's a difference between the population of addicts and the population of homeless folks at the homeless shelter. Do you all make a distinction, or if you're homeless, you're homeless, or there are different varieties of homelessness?
There are a number of the homeless issue is very complex, and so are the clients. So we have a number of issues. From county folks since 1999, 2000, 60% of folks that are homeless, street homeless, suffer from mental illness, or substance abuse, or both. You do have some other non-homeless groups or individuals that are out there panhandling, doing other things, that are probably not homeless and just taking advantage of circumstances. The one thing that I also want to make sure gets at least you all become aware of is Bethany House is technically what we call a dry shelter. And so what that means is if you're under the influence or you're inebriated, you're not going to be allowed to stay there, not even in the courtyard. It used to be that we had less of a homeless issue, that you know, if you're in the courtyard and as long as you behave, you're going to be okay. But now we have families living there, so that issue is a little more complicated. So if you look at a big important gap that should be planned for in the future, and we're alas that you start thinking about investing some funds down the road, is on a wet shelter, a place that actually will take in the folks that are either addicted or suffer from alcoholism, long-term substance abuse issues. That's not something Bethany House, unless you're clean, you're not going to stay there, or you're not going to be given a unit. So, and they're going to
They'll feed you though.
oh yeah, absolutely. Everybody and anybody that's after that is hungry will get fed.
So, what came first? If the homeless population in downtown, or the homeless shelter in downtown?
The population came first. We were after the project downtown development of the business sector wanting us to take away folks who are sleeping in their storerooms. So we actually designed it and we built that initial facility, which was 8 beds and a small shelter for men, to kind of take that away from the downtown.
Because and maybe I'm wrong, and please correct me, but it seems that once the new part of the homeless shelter was built out, that we saw an increase in the population of homeless individuals downtown.
But what we saw is we integrated families, which were
Before it was just 8 families with 20 beds per men. So now you have 17 families in units, plus 20 beds per men, plus up to 20 beds per women. So now you're seeing in half a block a concentration of folks that were probably sleeping in other places, kind of desegregated. So that's what you're probably the community is seeing, where there seems to be a concentration. That was what we're realizing now too is the mixing is getting to a point that it's not probably the best scenario for people, because you've got families with mentally ill folks that probably that's as good as it gets for them. So we really need to create a vision to remove possibly the shelter. Now that's my personal opinion. I don't speak for any board with this conference that hasn't been really dealt with the organizations involved. But personally, I think we got to take the shelter probably to another side.
That's where I was getting at, because and maybe Mr. Levesque can shed some light on the homeless shelter and the situation in downtown Austin. Originally, everybody thought it was a great idea, but then it was, I guess, a mixing of elements, oil and water, and it became an issue. Not
It's a tremendous issue right now. It's killing a portion of 6th Street. It's killing a portion of Trinity Red River, and it's also expanding over to the university now.
And so, if we, where I was thinking is that, we were going to do some sort of facility, and I know that the one in San Antonio is not without its issues either, but that, for future endeavors, that we ought to be thinking about someplace other than downtown, because right now there's all this, intent to redevelop downtown. It makes it even more challenging when you have a lot of the downtown merchants that, and people who visit downtown concerned about these elements that are there.
Sure.
And that's my concern.
I wanted the transient population, and I'll say fortunately, is not one that we seem to have a large presence of, which is something the larger metros, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas. They see these transients that sometimes there's a little bit of lifestyle in there as opposed to other issues. We're fortunate enough to have that type of population. But we really, for this year, in the next 2 months, we really are going to debate what best fits downtown and what doesn't. Because we didn't have those 9 units that we added a couple of years ago. We didn't have those, but we sure could use them. And we're using them. We could use more. So it's really going to have to be a collaborative exercise to make sure that we're looking at all the interests with the different populations that are there.
So what next we have to proceed or manager of, how do we address to get this, because I know it's a complicated issue, but it's got to be addressed in some way.
We can continue on there. I think one of the key things in this presentation that the current study is being conducted by KMU in trying to focus our efforts collaboratively with the homeless coalition on where the community needs to basically put it, let's say, shelter or moving or not. So some of the key, I'll just go over some of the other key data. One of the important things in this presentation, and I wanted to include it on here, and I want to thank you for putting it out, is the homeless coalition with providing a lot of information and providing it for the important time frame. As you can see, the bottom chart, where it says became homeless, one of the myths that we have is that all homeless folks are not going to be later. And actually 76%, based on the survey data, are we have 60% that are from out of state and 8% that are not provided but protected. So I wanted to point that key information out. 72% male, 20% female. Where do they sleep? Primarily they're based in ranching. We sleep at the emergency shelter, number 1 and 2, street sidewalks, 3, additional housing, and 4, shared facility development. Main reasons for being homeless, financial reasons, of course, the top issue, unemployment, inability to pay rent or mortgage, and then the 4th and final item would be substance abuse and mental health issues.
Do we know what portion of the population are veterans?
7.5%, so it's right there on the chart. At the bottom, median age is 46, going to 7.5% of that population. That's the estimate.
But for veterans, we get preference, we do have a lot of.
Yes, sir, and we do have fast options provided by VA, and we had 15 in one of the states of presentation from Commonwealth, the American Initiative, and the challenge was that through efforts in Washington, and also some other efforts in terms of collaborating with the state and the Northern Housing Authority, we've been able to establish some preferences and eliminate a lot of the barriers. Once it took us about a month or two from the time that the homeless veterans was identified, like getting a house, or getting in our house, and not even have that kind of thing happening a week, 2 weeks, which it seems long still, we're still working on that. But 2 months to 1 week to 2 weeks is a great thing for us. What we've done is to
We should be into this, correct? We had a long list, but now I think we just have to.
yes, we one of the things that we're doing there in council, we're meeting weekly. The Housing Authority, Veteran House, VA, Family Endeavors, and Development Department, meets weekly, and we will, it's called a biannual list. It's called a biannual list, and we will better by better. And we currently have about 8 that we're working with. One of the key things from defining this, we've been able to get VA to see how the efforts that we've been doing have assisted us in reducing that time, and we've been able to get 7 more vouchers, increasing our last voucher to 22. We're hoping in this next round, we'll go to Washington, we can go through our case again, and we can get maybe another, maybe up to 10 more vouchers, to do all this improvements in the various towns. The next slide. The slide in front of you, you'll see is it's critical, the space of the survey. You'll see that some gray dots and a number in those gray dots. They're downtown in some areas along I-35, West Laredo, and then also in South Laredo. So you see the gray dots. The bigger the dot is, the more homeless concentration were identified and surveyed. So you see downtown, of course, where all the beds are. With the key area where more surveys were conducted. So I really wanted to show the disconnect between where the people are residing at and then up where the airport is. You see,
What's 21?
you see all the services up in this area primarily in North Laredo. So there's that disconnect right now that's been identified, and that's one of the issues in the study that we addressed in terms of what's the best way to get them together so that people can reach that assistance that they need, whether it's substance abuse counseling, mental health issues, or medical services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, misconceptions and realities. I'll start from the top. Most homeless misconceptions that most homeless are not open. We just talked about that. At minimum, 75% of them are living in possible rooms. Number 2, students are provided all the resources for students. The reality is, intensive counseling is often needed, not available to them. Misconception: homeless veterans know where to go. The reality: navigating veterans services to account. We're still working on it. We've gotten better. But we're still working on that. On the veterans. Misconception: most people choose to be homeless. The reality: a minimum 55% of homeless suffer from mental health and substance abuse disorder. Misconception: there's a shelter. They can go all there, or they know where to go. The reality: those with chronic substance abuse issues are often not able to be assisted in violent facilities. So, as Mr. Survival mentioned earlier, we have violent facilities that we have, and even then there's pretty stretched in, but there's no place for dealing with substance abuse issues without there's no web shelter. So the need for a web shelter is there. Our current housing inventory, the emergency shelter, Bethany House Laredo has 28 beds for men, 22 for women. Salvation Army has 26 beds, primarily men. Casa City Program has 37 beds for domestic violence. And then the permanent housing, support housing, next step is 20 beds. And the traditional housing units, we have 17 units, with approximately 65 beds in those combined units.
How do our homeless shelter, supportive housing facilities numbers in comparison or combined with our homeless population? How does that compare with other communities our size? Are we, at par? Are we way behind?
One of the key things federally, HUD has focused on the Housing First initiative. So basically, they're targeting and they're continuum of care and the balance of state, which is basically the mechanism for the money coming from for housing, for homeless is a prioritizing supportive housing. So I can tell you this much, Mr. Oficial, I appreciate it too. The Bethany House, through the balance of state, just recently lost this past 280,000 in funding. Because the balance of state, when the money's come in, since the priorities by the federal government now for HUD, they're prioritizing housing first. They're focusing their attention on permanent supportive housing applications. Our units are Bethany House are primary traditional housing. So that's not their focus now. They're looking at permanent supportive housing, trying to house somebody, but obviously that's much more expensive, much more resource critical. So it's limiting what we can do. So we have locally, hopefully through the study that we're doing, we'll focus on how we as a coalition think that we still need transitional housing. Because when we have a homeless person, they still need that assistance and more resources to get to permanent support housing. Because they're not always ready to make that jump just because they're helping them right now. They need assistance to get job counseling, mental health services, substance abuse counseling, whatever the case may be, and that's difficulty we're encountering right now. So that is a challenge for us and everybody else in the United States. So, but HUD is focused on how to work initiative, which is causing a little bit of issues right now. But we are doing the continuum of care update study. It was initiated in July of last year, and July 2016. We expect it to complete February. We do have a strategic planning session scheduled for next week on the 11th and 12th with the key coalition members to get their input, and also the partners involved in the coalition. The next one in time count is January 26, 2017, and that's where we'll all get together and we'll go ahead and get this study back. The intent of the study that we're going to do is define the organizational structure of the collaborative. The primary question we have is, we need to establish a lead entity. Who's going to take up that mantle to basically bring it all together? Establish service role through HUD and the federal money community. They're looking at a coordinated entry strategy, which is basically trying to identify whether we could centralize or decentralize, single point entry or multiple point entry, also assisting with the navigation through that coordinated entry strategy. So that needs to be identified in the beginning. We already know some of the service gaps, needs, and we need in our community. One for sure, we need an enhanced point of task coordination. We need an outreach effort to be increased by our service providers. And of course, like Mr. Solano mentioned earlier, work shelter is needed for the county counseling. Additional housing is needed through additional housing support and permanent support housing. And then triage coordination. We know that there are needed efforts. The study should identify those critical items that we need to address first and how we should find the resources. And the last, of course, identify those resources allocated funds for awarding strategy. And the key point that we want all to bring to council is this issue needs to be addressed not only by the city, but including the county and every service provider that is out there. So it needs to be a combined collaborative to take care of this problem. The other initiative I'm working quickly with is the mayor's challenge and the mayor's and council took on. Some of the things that we've done throughout the year that have assisted in reducing that housing time for veterans. And then the city has established a priority for veterans and municipal housing. Basically, we have a homeless center referred to by a veterans organization. that veteran goes to the top of the list, and I have a 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom unit there in this house, they get assistance, they get put in first priority for that vacancy. We've eliminated barriers, as I mentioned earlier, we meet, on a weekly basis each Monday with a veteran VA, family endeavor, housing authority, letting house, and, we go letter by letter, finding this, and we see what we need to do, whether it's, providing care packages, whether it's what the issue is, they don't have a deposit, whether it's, coordination of utilities, equipment of utilities, we try to address each of those veterans needs, breaking through all that coordination, is we've been able to increase our badge document from 50 to 22. One other good thing that's been established, the Laredo housing authority has changed its, public housing waiting list, priority. One of the things that has been put a preference, is if you're a homeless veteran, you get a preference, so you go to the top of the areas. So that enables us to reach, to be able to get a Section 8 voucher for housing. That Section 8 voucher is also combined, of course, with like, let's say, for example, we just recently had some Section 8 vouchers for veterans, and then, we were able to identify some vacancies for the housing. We coordinated with this police that same day, we had the unit inspected. We had already services connected to our housing services, so that veteran was able to get it and investigate it. So, those efforts all work, and it is all coordinated effort by the together. And last but not least, the city most recently announced its efforts, looking at the city veterans preference and funding policy. Of course, we do a motion for this. We did our human resources department working on the policy.
But we can't take action on that.
We'll bring it back.
We'll place it on the agenda. But we did direct.
And last but not least, some of the public issues, policing issues that, speaking, Chief Martin, when he was on the conversation, that the need for a discussion and potential establishment of an ordinance regarding public safety and public living divided rights.
Chief Gordon, would you?
For the record, Greg Walker, Chief of Police, our involvement in the home is basically, the main thing is keeping them safe. And also gathering intelligence as much as we can to share with the Homeless Coalition and other agencies. But we wrote in 3 years 297 citations for panhandling or camping, of which I can assure you that 99% of them, they don't have the money, so they don't go in there and pay. And then a case is issued, but we're not able to place them in the West County Jail due to the population and overcrowding at the jail, and also the fact that most of them are 7% of them are either alcoholics or using drugs, and the sheriff is not interested in that. It's a liability issue for him. On the public safety issue, to stop the panhandlers from getting into the street at the street corners, we've all seen. Like I said, we've issued citations and it doesn't stop. We see them, we ask them to leave, and they're back in the street in 4 or 5 minutes. So San Antonio came, and I believe also Austin came up with a city ordinance in which not only can we address the panhandler, but also address the fact that people who are driving by and giving them on the right of way, giving donations of either money or clothing or food, is that itself will become a violation. And our hope, we need to keep the traffic flowing. We have not had, as far as I can remember in the last couple of years, we've not had a panhandler hurt in the intersections. But I myself have come close to going through the Delmar McPherson several times. Depending on where the sun is, I've come close to hitting something. And so by telling the public and also making it a violation, you want to give money, pull off onto a private property. And then, have the person come over there or give some of this money, and that's what we're hoping of, getting the money to the social agencies that can go out there, assist the home. There's been several stories. One most recent, money was being collected by a panhandler, and when the traffic cleared up and the individuals were able to go on their destination, they saw them walking up the street with a six pack of beer. And some of these people are taking advantage of it. We just need to do something. I've got the downtown bicycle corps, Sergeant Chris Baker. He's excellent. You got Rick Hart, but he also is very good enforcement officer, great supervisor, but he helps the homeless out. And most of my officers up and down the interstate border, because that's where a lot of them sleep, they too are, they have a big heart, and they want to try to help the people out, but at the same time, we got to take care of the safety, and we try to move them on. So occasionally, we have to write citations, but we're in hopes that bringing it to you all, the ordinance, will make it a violation to give or donate somebody while on the right of way of the city of Lorenzo.
Okay, do we have any comments on that? First, that view is fair, people do want to donate, do that on private property, but if they're right away in the streets from potential injuries involved to the person asking the one giving. So maybe, maybe council, I guess we'll discuss it further.
We can bring it back.
I've got a question. For Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia,
Thank you, Chief.
we had previously discussed the hiring preference for veterans, and I had concerns about gender discrimination because I think that we realized that probably about 90% of veterans are male, and so I did not realize that the city had established a preference for veterans in housing. My question is, if we have a veteran, which we know is going to be by 90% of the time male, and let's say you had a lone veteran male, and you had a female head of household with one child, who would get that home?
The veteran is just referred first primarily. Now, it's all based on vacancies.
Okay, so I want to stop you there. So what you're saying is that if a single mother with a child, if she was with one child, if she's not a veteran, a single male veteran would get a home ahead of her, based on our preference?
Typically, it's hard to say, but we haven't had those issues because we had enough vacancies. When I get a referral, they go to the top of the list, so that wait time is eliminated. We have over 500 apartment units and homes available, so there's always a rotation going on. So once I get the order from our coalition members that have veterans, I'll start working with our municipality director. We have a vacancy, there's everybody waiting on the lead, and we'll focus all our efforts to try to get that information done. Obviously, there's a turnaround once we leave, 15 that they're ready to go. So we'll focus all our efforts to try to get it done. And we have this, we have 2 or 3 veterans. Typically, they always a single male. We have had one actual family member that was a female.
Right.
And we had 2 children, so we did house in the house, or we paid them together. So, but we do face those issues, daily basis and try to address them.
How is there a waiting list?
Yes, we do have ratings.
About how many?
Each week, I have several ratings, because when somebody goes to municipal house, that's what happens. Municipal housing units, or city units, they are not the housing authority, which is a separate waiting list, which is better. Ours is just by the local policy, which has about 500 single family and multi-family units. Depending on that renter we want, whether you want the house, 3 bedroom, 2 bedroom, or 1 bedroom apartment, 2 bedroom apartment, we'll put them on that.
Those are the list depending on the size.
Yes, and those are varying, there's always a lot of interest because we have very affordable rents. And, a lot of people, hear about it, so they put themselves on the waiting list. Now, just because you put yourself on that waiting list, you come up next, it means that you're gonna get, an ability to get into the revenue, have to run a credit check for you, and have to have the ability to pay. So, if they are,
But, I mean, all things considered, all things being equal, you pass the credit check, the veteran goes ahead, and potentially goes ahead of maybe a small family. If you have a single veteran and a small family, that can be the same size unit, there could be gender discrimination.
well, I don't think it's, I'm classified as that, sir, because it might be that we're meeting with the same, veteran community. So once I get confirmation from one of the other things, which is the family members or the benefit or VA, they forward that request to us, and say, hey, you have a vacancy, I have to done it, so we'll take it and meet you over there, and we'll take them up there and start working on it. Basically, as soon as that first vacancy comes in, we identify them as that. So, even if you're a family member, we have a one that we have a family, 2 or 3, well, it's probably not the best fit for you, so we're trying to identify that 2 better, and then you kind of, a month or so, we'll try to figure something else out for them. I mean, we're not doing solutions, we do have other, if I mean, never, we can take for department somewhere else, we try to identify the needs in the community that might be available. So, we're not doing a single course.
Right. Maybe we can discuss this, city council and others, a lot of questions.
And, administratively, if that's what our council wants us to go, we could probably prioritize families. If it does come to that, in the case of the family compared to the city better, that's the case.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious because that it's important for us to know who's getting preference and who's not getting preference. And,
We haven't had that issue. I haven't had a conflict where, that's competing for 1 year or even for another year. And last but not least, on this, public safety issue, we want to focus on the law PSAs for public safety, public engaging the right of ways. Some of the things we want to potentially recommend is installing signage in the intersections. We like people going to local charities. We don't want to incentivize them to sell panhandlers in the intersections causing, public safety concerns. Also coordinate TV, radio, and social media campaigns regarding that. And last but not least, try to work on some sort of coordinated fundraising effort, for example, at the HEB or the bank, for the $100 piece of local homeless coalition effort, or Bethany House, or Bethany program, we can provide a donation for that. We can't do it. Thank you very much for that.
So thank you very much. Yeah. We're losing.
and here,
Go back here.
Oh, are they?
right there, the heat. They're trying to heat it.
I never got it after lunch.
Well, anyway, maybe they're within hearing distance and they can hear it. Yeah, the next item on my issue is scoring a hospital district. We're treating symptoms here, and these are the same symptoms of poverty, obviously homelessness, hunger, health is crucial. And I'm calling on Dr. Gonzalez community to help describe the need that we have. I have approached by people, and this topic of the hospital district has come up. Not that I'm necessarily for it, because it does have a taxing component, but I think that we need to explore and see what value, if any, something like this would provide to the community and obviously help the people that are not being helped. And in some cases, and in some instances, many cases are being turned away from the hospitals. And who else but Dr. Gonzalez who sees that on a daily basis throughout the clinic? It has worked in other communities. Some other communities have sadly said no to these districts, but they do have the potential to make the exercise of evaluating this, exploring this, and we can learn something and apply something different. Like I said, I'm not for it or against it, I just want to explore it, and hopefully council will support some investigation to help the needy, the people that need help Then beyond, again, beyond our control, I know the federal government has a lot to do with this. Likely we can attract federal monies, protesting the drugs that we do, because it's too much of a task financially, but it all depends on what's there. I'm not going to
Mayor, Council, Nick Gonzalez from the State Health Department. Thank you, Mayor, for bringing this item up, and you and I have had a conference call with Persa and Congressman Cuellar's office, and most recently with both hospitals. This issue of a hospital district, which is one way to address indigent care, because as you see in the handout I gave you, it's not going away. Our community health assessment that we did in 2011, that was funded by CDC, showed that 40% of the population is uninsured. The state says that it's 35%. It's still my rating says the state kept us at a rate of 25% is uninsured. If we use their rates, 35. If we use the one we get, it's 40. Regardless, it's a high level of uninsured. So that means that they will only go to the doctor for preventive care when they need to. 33% still don't know how they go to seek care. We just had an incident with a 32-week pregnant woman with no care whatsoever going to one of our local hospitals, and she was positive for syphilis. And the baby was born with syphilis and had to stay 10 days in the hospital for his treatment. That's cost to the taxpayer. We talked to both hospitals, they have an extremely high rate of uncompensated care. Our ambulance service reflects that as well, uncompensated care. And two issues that contribute to that were just discussed is poverty and homelessness, which add to the issue of the uninsured. So the hospital district is an option. There's different formulas. It is tax-based. It's a state mandate. For example, it can't be more than 25 cents per $100 tax value. And so there's different ways of doing it. I think you recall with the hospitals and with other entities to sit down and discuss what options are available to a hospital district or for a hospital district like effort. I think it can help.
If we lost the mic, is the mic on?
Yeah.
Okay. We have extra mics here. We have a long pool. Yes. Want to grab a
Or perhaps he could sit at one of these tables.
sit here with us?
We got batteries.
Mayor, just to continue then,
Is the camera comes up the dock?
this is an option, and then I think some of the discussion with the hospitals, they have ideas that both CEOs have worked in areas where you have a hospital district. That is already a hub for medical care, and so another venue for potential tax dollars would be to make it a regional care facility to also address the other counties that already come to care here, Zapata, Jim Hall, Cubana, Denton, LaSalle, they already come here for care. And so a regional approach would be one of the options. But things already happening. Certainly the city has been over the years to provide services to indigent care. We have Gateway Community Health Center, which is fairly qualified. But then you have also Methodist, Mercy, so you have faith-based groups already trying to serve as a safety net. And ours is through the hospital district, how do we incorporate those efforts? The other issue is that we're medically underserved. We continue to be. We have a federal and state designation. We don't have enough family practitioners and then some specialties, psychiatrists, neurosurgeons, orthopedics. We don't have enough. And I think two efforts that are being done, I congratulate LMC and Dr. Gassa, who have been instrumental in trying to connect with the new School of Osteopathic Medicine from San Antonio to develop a residency program here. And that way you attract physicians And if they do the training here, most of them stay here. The UD Health Science Center, San Antonio also has come to Laredo and met with many of us to see how they can support training programs also. Training programs are connected to a hospital district program as well. They need a hospital to train. And there you can attract knowledge to the person, they